I'm sure we could all agree on that. But if there was some kind of matrix that said, okay, you've got a number 1 house or an A house, you've got a B structure, and you've got a C garage, and we will not be as concerned about that, because I do think part of the Lake West feel is the individual answers to individual questions. Somebody wanted to build a mission-style house. Somebody else wants to build a much more vernacular-style house. It's in the same time period. And then people go through these huge trends, like the whole mid-century thing. We've got some, I'm a big mid-century person. I'm on my, well, I've owned 3 of them. Simply because I was raised in a small foreign country and we didn't have any houses like that. So I came here, looked at those and went, wow, I've seen this on TV, you know. So then I think that if we can offer support to those who are interested in preserving both their house from a preservation standpoint and from a character standpoint, and some people are going to go overboard on character. And I was a little bit, there was a case, and I don't want to describe it too closely, where somebody talked about the efforts they've made to make their rather plain house look more historic than it really was. That disturbs me too, just as much as ripping historic details off. Adding fake history is a kind of pet peeve of mine. I do think that we also need to, if we're going to have, for instance, you mentioned shopping, if we're going to have some kind of economic growth in this town, I think that we are going to have to make some room for it. And I think that we need to get ahead of the game so that somebody doesn't come in and destroy a beautiful, maybe rather simple building in the name of building a row of shops. I mean, if you go down to Key West, you see a lot of those box stores. You know, there's Coach, and then there's the Gap. It's awful. It's awful. When I got there, it was all these little shops that sold interesting clothes, not funky things particularly, but it was not the stuff that you get in a mall anywhere across the country. So I think we want to balance trying to have a thriving economic opportunity with that whole thing. We do need our town to thrive, so we need to get ahead of that and go, well, who could we give some kind of incentive to move into a really nice building and fix it up, and what things can we be a little bit more free-flowing about. I do think that, I was talking to Brian Green about the National Park standards, and Key West has basically thrown them out the window as being much too vague. They're not throwing them out because they're, I'm saying it incorrectly, they're not throwing them out because they're bad, they're throwing them out because they're not good enough. So I think the idea of style sheet would do a lot for that kind of thing. And then my last point is that there is a movement, and there have been court cases where people have tried to make changes to their buildings to put things like solar panels on, or hurricane hazard mitigation things on. We need to look at that, because we also need to have a city that is really, really safe, that has a smaller solar footprint if we possibly can, and see, again, get out ahead of it so that we don't have some hideous banks of car batteries lying around in somebody's yard. And instead we have something that we've thought about or stayed on top of. So I'd like to be a little bit ahead on that. It's certainly the wave of the future, and the Department of State has given a little bit of favorable consideration to those who are trying to make a place have higher efficiency, and it has sometimes gone against preservation standards. So if we can get ahead of that, maybe we don't have to have a conflict. That's it.
Thank you. As you just heard, you have a very professional and passionate staff that does assist a lot of projects to be improved. And I appreciate and value your input on all of them. Our board are your neighbors and want to work with you. It's difficult sometimes, and we want to make preservation part of the future. Hurricanes are in our future. We need protection from hurricanes. I think that if we lose any more concrete tile roofs, the architecture is going to be diminished a lot. And just to be more specific, then I mentioned the maps as being gerrymandered. I think permits, the initial application should be reviewed that same day and designated as being complete. I think we need to be able to upgrade our material list immediately and be able to recognize new materials as being part of new building. We're not here to restore, actually. We want our homes to last. So that said, staff, do you want to respond to any of our?
Can I just make one more comment too? I think too, if we're too restrictive, we're going to have more and more people making changes without any approval on the weekends.
Yeah.
And I see it even now. I don't report things that I see, but it does happen.
We do not want to disincentivize.
Yeah. And I mean, the city loses revenue, and then we really have no control over what happens to the exterior of the house.
And some of that occurs from lack of speed of approval too.
Yeah.
It might not be, or their fear of lack of speed of approval, I should really say that. Personally, I know nobody that took a long time to get something approved. I've heard complaints, but they're not from people I know that are personally going through the process. Yes.
They may be old complaints too. I mean, there's been a tremendous amount of work done with the new building official, and I know I pulled a permit for my windows recently, and I was a staff level review and through with the building official, and they had to do some research related to my approval, and all of that took, I would say, a month maybe at the most. You pull a permit at the county, you're going to have a different experience. Okay.
Well, I'll touch on the building permit first. As you may or may not know, the building official sort of runs the building division, and I don't really have the legislative authority to override the building official, even though in his absence I can act as a building official if necessary. We have dramatically improved the ability to have permits go through faster. Upon my arrival, our building official was in West Palm Beach. We had 2 plans reviewers and inspectors. One was known as Red Tag, we'll leave the rest of it. And now that one of them had the best of reputations with the city, and it took a very long time to get building permits reviewed because they were all going out. And because we were kind of known as a city who didn't get along with anybody, we weren't really a high priority for either West Palm Beach or for our outside consultants who review permits. Now we have every discipline back in-house except for mechanical, which includes air conditioning, HVAC, and fire plans review at the county. Plan review does go a lot better. We have struggled I think a lot of people in the past have expected a lot of input from staff, from whatever level, to help get their applications complete. We have maybe a third the staff we used to have at the height of the investment of the city during the 2000s. We now have at or more permits being reviewed, and at that time, there was one third the staff. We have improved a lot of the processes. It is difficult to get comprehensively complete applications. We try not to say no to people when they bring in an application. There are checklists for the certificate of appropriateness, there's checklists for the building permit. But I've let my front desk know that if someone insists to go ahead and apply for a permit, they're more than welcome to. We will get to it and look at it, and we can get back to them on what is missing. I don't want to turn someone away who's taking the time to come downtown or down to our office to submit an application, but the number of incomplete permit applications is extraordinary, and those take a lot of staff time to catch up on, and we do try to address things in the order that they come. We have changed the priority a little bit to review the permits that come in on a day or every other day basis to move along the ones that are actually complete, which does irritate some people because their application wasn't heard first, but their application wasn't complete. So we aren't able to make everybody happy. There are changes that have occurred in the building code as well as the fire code that have stumbled up a lot of people on what's required in their plans. Because we only have one person doing each thing, if someone goes out, say for vacation, say for electrical, it gets sent out to Hyberg as an outside consultant, and that might be their priority for the week. So we do have some inconsistencies in being able to deliver permit review because I really only have one person doing each thing. And that's just the economics of where we are. We can't afford to have the luxury of having lots of staff being around for when we get an influx of, say, 25 permits on a single day, and then the next day we don't have any.
We have a lot of volunteers in the city. Would it be a position where you could get a group of volunteers that would actually help review something? If you get an influx of permits that come in, at least for completion?
In theory, it could, and I'm not on a soapbox to complain. I like to try to present solutions. We are in a space that when I arrived here, I was told you're only here temporarily because you were moved out of City Hall. You're not supposed to be here. We've grown from 18 staff positions to 32 positions. We've added no new space. Our building files are in the basement of City Hall. We use them on a daily basis. I don't literally logistically have a place to put a volunteer unless they were out in the parking lot. We are in the process of enclosing a back porch that will provide triple the space for the building division so that all the plans from downstairs can be at our office, which is one of our biggest complaints, is trying to get all the information necessary to review a permit is in 3 different places. And because it's 3 different places, we don't have a lot of quality control over where stuff is. And citizens are often very upset that their file is empty, their stuff isn't kept together. We do have a goal to improve that. It's just taking me longer than I expected because the first round of proposals to impose the courts came in about triple over budget. I think it's because people thought, oh, Lake Forest will just take it for a ride. It's now within budget, it's in for permitting, and hopefully we'll have that finished before the end of the calendar year, and everything can be in one place. And that will dramatically speed up, especially Amy and Katie's time on being able to compare and provide access to the public. What did your house used to look like? What are the things that we can improve staff-wise? What are things that are important about it? We will have better control over what's actually in people's files, and so that when you go to look at it and people are surprised, oh, that isn't my house, but that's the file for my house. That happens a lot too.
William, can I just ask you, we've all kind of presented our thoughts and done some of the thinking, as you can see, that you asked us to do about our priorities. What specific direction do you need from us tonight to move forward with your plans? Because we have the design guidelines moving forward, and then we have the upcoming survey. What do you need from us to help you inform maybe those design guidelines or take forward?
We don't have design guidelines necessarily in the drafting stage. We don't have the money to hire a consultant, so it will be incumbent upon staff to try to put something together. I've been trying to work on maybe thoroughfare guidelines for 3 years and can't find more than 5 minutes to work on it any one time. What I would hope that we have is a consensus among the board of what areas are open for discussion we feel comfortable with. So when we talk with the public in June, we can say, here are areas we would like to investigate. As a suggestion, and it's what someone brought up, the Secretary of Interior standards are across the country, and they are not site-specific, environmentally specific, period-specific, and that's why almost every community, actually every community I've ever worked in except for this one, has had design guidelines to represent what intrinsically you want to preserve in this district. We do, under our ordinance and Secretary of Interior standards, we don't differentiate very much contributing from non-contributing and which elevation we're looking at. I think there is some openness that we can look at elevations that are on the back or face an alley or that don't face a street, that we can look at them a little different than we look at primary facades. Materials is a interesting question because there are a number of materials that Lakeworth never allowed. Though they have gotten into, they were
Which we can change.
we can change.
So
Where
would
it needs to be,
when we have these meetings with the associations, would that be a place for them to come up with guidelines, or, I mean,
I want to hear where their struggles are, where they are being tripped up, what their interest is, because a lot of them may have bought in the district before it was a district. How do they feel being in a district? What may be some of the misperceptions, misunderstandings of what it means to be in one. I do agree that there has been a great influx and interest in investing in the historic districts, not only from new homeowners, but existing homeowners. And many of them may have had a lifelong dream to do a certain thing to their house, and they come in, they've owned the house for 25 years, and now they can't necessarily do what they wanted to do because it doesn't meet the basic tenets of our guidelines.
so if we have these meetings and they come up with guidelines, how difficult is it to implement that, considering the fact that we're using the Secretary of Interior standards? Is that something that would supplement?
We have to amend our ordinance, I
We have to
believe.
amend our
We
ordinance.
have to.
Which we can do.
We would need to come up with, I'm not looking necessarily for the neighborhood to come up with guidelines. I'm looking for them to give us ideas of where they want the things to be considered. Where we do struggle is that introducing new materials without thinking about them, you have to consider the fact that that new material, in any way that it's manufactured, where I know that Amy and I and probably Katie have struggled, there are some really good vinyl window products on the market, and there's some really, really bad ones. But once you approve them, they're all open to, we can't recommend you use this company versus another one. So we haven't opened up the door overly wide to new materials until we know the full ramifications of that. It's like when we make an ordinance change, we don't just do it carte blanche and quickly. We try to think about it because unfortunately we have to consider for the worst common denominator. Who is going to, like, for a new use that might happen, how might somebody run that use? It's going to irritate everybody else in the world, where 95% of them are good property owners and like that use and it works just fine. It's the 5% that might want to abuse the rule that then irritates the other 95%.
Let's hear from the public.
Yeah, we
I
should have some
think
public
one quick comment that we didn't address here, and that is, what is historic reviewing? And I know a long time ago, it used to be colors. When I worked for the city, I had somebody walk into the office with a van full of colors, and then another thing that had like 12 colors on it, and she was asking me for advice to paint her house. And, well, I can help you, I guess. And she said, well, no, you're supposed to. And told me about this color code thing that was...
Doesn't exist anymore.
Doesn't exist.
So,
But I'm gonna get to something else here that's important. And it's fences. This is one item that seems to get reviewed in historic, it's reviewed in planning and zoning. And it's my personal belief that if we're reviewing a fence for historic, we're reviewing it because it is a historic fence. It's over 50 years old. But it seems that we look at fences, new fences, in a historic sense. So this is, I think, something the neighborhoods should be asked. Not just fences, but other items that are technically not part of the historic structure.
But we
Well,
revealed
fences
because
actually
they're
are a broader
historic
issue that
districts.
affects all the neighborhoods because, for instance, we haven't allowed chain link in the front for ages. We allow it in the back. we haven't allowed vinyl fencing. It was not in the ordinance when I got here. It hasn't been, I'm not saying the preservation ordinance is actually not in the fence code. There were a number of vinyl fences approved over time that I'm not sure, I guess they slipped through the crack, or we didn't enforce that portion of the rule. The staff doesn't have luxury to just choose and say, we're not going to enforce that part of the rule anywhere in the city because we don't like vinyl fences anymore, or we do like them. Some of those materials do need to have a discussion, and there should be parameters on how they're introduced, because some of the modern technologies can create fences that will look very atypical and inappropriate and sort of out of left field out of that material. They may be fine in the city as in a general sense, but there are some new methods that Katie and Amy have been encountering, that these laser cut fences that can get very, very elaborate that we've not ever seen before. And they can be very, very attractive. They just look a little odd sometimes on a very plain vernacular house, and the fence is way fancier than the house is, and you're riding along, and it's sort of jarring. So fences are reviewed for consistency with the property that is actually there.
And that's, I think that's the number one complaint I'm
Yes.
getting. And why is it a historic thing? I usually have to turn around and explain to people, well, it's a planning and zoning thing, which we do review when you're in the historic district, but I didn't realize you're reviewing it for historic.
All right, we don't have any blue cards, so we'll just, ladies, you want to start first?
Because I was the first one here. I hate being the first, but thank you. I appreciate that. My name is Lee. I live in the College District. And first of all, I want to thank everyone on this board as well as city staff.
Do apologize.
I know this
You
is
did give your address.
331 Cornell Drive, I'm
And
sorry.
you have 3 minutes.
I understand.
Everybody's going to have 3 minutes.
Which is why I had it tucked up, because as you may have noticed at the last meeting, I tend to run on, so I knew I wasn't going to get done. So I have given your secretary a copy of my comments, if you don't mind reading them when you have time. And I know that, thank you all for doing what you do, because I know you volunteer your time, your efforts, and your expertise, all of which I like, and your staff work very hard for you. And I know that when you volunteer, you always hear complaints. You rarely hear things. I volunteer for a lot of different animal organizations, and I know that's the case, but thank you for everything that you all do. We do appreciate it. And now on to the complaints. My name is Lee. I purchased my historically designated Mediterranean Revival home about 15 years ago, and I have a business here, and I have been a resident here for almost 15 years. So I have kind of developed this city, or I have watched it develop, or for the lack of a word, deteriorate. That's how I see it. And those are basically my concerns. I know that Joe Riley, the former mayor of Charleston, which I'm sure you all are very familiar with, because he was very, very instrumental in revitalizing the downtown area. He once said that you want as many people as possible with an overall stake in the region to be living in the city. That means voting, paying taxes, and having a say-so. And these are the people, I think, who are here today, as well as you all are those people. And we probably, most of us skipped dinner and came right from work to come here in order to be here, because it is that important. We feel that it's important, and we appreciate the fact that you all have thought it important enough to do what you do. And I don't like what's been happening in our city. I think it can be fixed. I don't think it's what you all want. I know it's not what my neighbors and I want, and it can be changed. It has happened in neighborhoods like St. Petersburg, Florida, where they now have a Vinoy hotel instead of a vacant building where vagrants used to live. And I know that at the last meeting, Mr. Robinson took the time to thank each of us for investing in the city of Lake Worth. And I know that was very sincere, but I think it's going to be very hard, and it has been very hard, for people to want to invest in the homes and businesses of Lake Worth because of what we have to go through when we want to improve and preserve our homes. And I think it can change. I think this board has the vision to want to change. And I think that they need some help from staff and maybe from volunteers. I think all the points that you all made are very true, and they are heartfelt from all of us as well. There's 3 basic points that I wanted to make. This city can be made so much better. We're so close to the beach. We have beautiful old buildings that have been preserved and can be improved, but I don't think that the city is attracting new businesses or residents. From my own street, I see there's like 3 thriving businesses. That's it, I'm out. So, but they're World Thrift,
It's in
a
here.
liquor store, and a tattoo parlor. That's not good. Thank you for the time.
It's all written here. John, go ahead.
Very quickly, my,
Name and address?
sorry, John Willis, 106 Ocean Breeze, next to you.
Thank you.
I'm a former fire marshal in 2 municipalities in this county. I'm a former fire inspector for the state of Tennessee, Eastern Region. I'm aware, or cognizant of construction, renovation, demolition. I am reacting to Mr. Zellner's comment. You do have a hard job, you walk a fine line, but I have found in my experience in dealing with contractors, owners, builders, in all stages of life's situations, that the majority of the time money will will out as opposed to what might be aesthetically pleasing or might be the proper performance of a material. And yes, you have to walk the fine line, but I would not like to see us go down to the point where we will allow not anything, but I think I'm making my point. We need to keep the quality, not only of the material, but the quality of the intent of the code as well. When I was responsible for promulgating fire codes and enforcing them, I always stood to the intent of the law, not always the letter, because the intent of the law is, at least in my opinion, what kept people alive. So, I'll just throw that out there for your delight and edification. Sir, please forgive me, I don't know people too well, but we've met before. You made mention of the fact that one brand of windows might have had something that was good and then something else that was bad. Is there not any way that we can establish a performance requirements for materials as opposed to just branding?
Let me answer the question.
Yes,
Okay.
for everybody.
We could. We can't recommend any company specifically.
No, I realize that.
We could create a performance standard. What I don't want, and I'm not supporting necessarily this, is we would like to try to make things a little easier. We have a lot of general homeowners that would like to pull permits themselves, get information themselves, and we have sort of a complicated performance standard that specifies the window volumes can't be but so this, they have to be this kind of profile, the performance has to be this. They don't, that's too much for them to take in, and especially if you're going to go to Home Depot and they'll try to sell them, or the other one, what's the other big company? Lowe's. Sorry, I'm advocating for Home Depot. That person wants to sell windows, and so oftentimes we get, inferior products that are suggested, but they are the kind of material that the board has approved, and that's where I think the board and I struggle, because they get installed and are like, oh boy, it doesn't look as good as the